Students, welcome back to 2D video game design. Today we're going to add some movement to our sprite. So in order to do this, we're going to write a script. Before I do that, I just want to go into the hero and look at the inspector. We are going to be adjusting this property right here. So on the transform, we've got the position, the rotation, and the scale. And in order to move the sprite, what we're going to be doing is adjusting the X value and the Y value of the position. This movement right here, moving up, down, left, and right, this is called translation. That's going to be important when we get into the script. So let's go ahead and go into the script. There's the demo script from the last video. We don't need that, so actually let's go ahead and delete it. And now I'm going to create a new script by right-clicking, and then I create C# script, and I'm going to call this one player controller. Okay, so looking at this now, lines 1 through 3 are Unity importing different libraries. We don't need to pay attention to that right now, but basically what this is doing is telling it we're using Unity, so you're allowed to use all the Unity commands. We'll put that away right now. Now right here, public class player controller, everything inside these curly brackets is my player controller code. So we want to leave everything inside these curly brackets. Inside the player controller code, I have this start method. And everything between these two curly brackets is my start method. Now, as it states right here in this comment, start is called before the first frame update. So anything that we put inside start will run once. Down here we have the update method, and anything that we put inside the update method is going to run once per frame. So this is where a lot of gamers start talking about how many FPS they get. So if your computer is running fast and you're getting 120 frames per second, that means that the update feature will run 120 times every second. So we are going to just make our Pac-Man character move automatically right now. So inside the update function, I'm going to say I want it to move to the right. So I'm going to leave a comment here, move to the right. So in order to do that, I'm going to adjust the transform property. So transform, and then the transform has an ability called translate. And so I see it right there. Now, right here I get some help. It says translate needs a vector 3 translation, and then it's got 5 overloads, which means there's other ways to do it, but basically I have to give it a vector in order to tell it how to move. So I am going to put a vector in here. So let's say that I want a vector 2, and that vector 2 is going to be 1 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis. Okay, and now I'm going to save this. Okay, now one thing. Oh, that's an error. Okay, because I need to say that it's a new vector 2. There we go. Okay, now I just added the word new, and that made a change since I saved it. And if I look up here, there's this little star, and that star means that I've made a change since the last time I saved it. And that's really important because changes won't take place until you save them. So I'm just going to push Control S, and that's the quick key to save. So now what this is saying is that every frame I want my my sprite to move 1 to the right every frame. So let's see what that does in the game. Now I'm gonna push play and nothing's gonna happen. Okay, let's play. and nothing's happening. Here's why. I wrote this script, and in my script I said I want you to take the sprite and move it to the right, but I didn't tell it what sprite to use. So what I have to do is take this player controller script and I have to drag it onto the hero to apply it to that sprite. Oh, there it goes. So I'm going to do that again. Okay, so what you see is some really fast uncontrolled movement. And it's moving to the right automatically once per frame. Now this is really frustrating because what that means is depending on how fast your computer is, your sprite is going to move at different speeds. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to go ahead and up here before the start method, I'm going to declare a variable, and I'm going to make it a speed variable, which means I might want to float. Float will allow me to use decimals. So I'm going to say float, the speed is going to be 10.0f. Oh, I forgot to name it. Float speed. There we go. Speed is going to be 10. Now what I want that to mean is that the sprite is moving 10 pixels per second. And right now it's moving 1 pixel per frame. So in order to balance that out, what I want to do is I'm going to multiply this times time dot delta time. So time is an object within Unity, and time has a value called delta time. What delta time is, it's the amount of time between frames. So for example, if my computer right now is running at 60 frames per second, that means delta time is 1/60th. So that means if I take this and multiply it times however many frames, or how much time there is between frames, that means that my program is now moving my sprite at a rate of 1 pixel per second, which is very slow. So before I go any further, let's go back and look at it. There we go. It's really, really slow. Okay, so now I want to multiply that by speed. And my speed is 10. So I'm gonna, actually, let's go up here and I'm gonna add one more word to speed, and that is going to be public. What the word public is going to do is it's going to make it so I can access that variable from inside Unity. So I'm going to push Control S to save it. Now watch what happens in Unity. If I go to the hero, now if I look over here in the inspector, I see that there's this speed variable, and I can actually change the speed variable from inside Unity. So if I click play here, there, it's moving faster, but if that's too fast, I can go ahead and just change that to 5 right here. And then that'll make an adjustment in here. There, it's moving a little slower now. Okay, so that's all well and good if you want a video game where you have a guy that moves right without you being able to control it. However, none of us really want that. So I want to be able to control my character. So let's go ahead and add in public. No, not public. We want a float called horizontal input. And I'm just gonna close that with a semicolon, and that should actually be a lowercase following naming conventions. And now here in the update, I'm going to use the input function. I'm going to say the input has an ability called get axis. And get axis, which axis do I want to get? I want to get the horizontal axis, in quotes. And so what get axis does is it gives you a number between -1 and +1. So if I'm pushing on the left arrow key, that's going to be a -1. If I'm pushing on the right arrow key, that'll be a +1. So what I want to do is say that the horizontal input, spelling matters, the horizontal input is equal to input.getAxis horizontal. So now horizontal input is now going to be a number somewhere between -1 and +1. And then I'm going to go right here and I'm going to multiply this times horizontal input. What that's going to do is it's going to change this speed by whichever direction I'm pushing it. So if I'm pushing nothing, that means that the value will be 0 and there will be no movement. If I'm pushing left, the value will be -1, so it's going to move to the left. If I'm pushing right, it'll be +1, so it'll move to the right. So Control S to save, and then let's go back into the game. Okay, so now I'm not pushing anything and there's no movement. I'm going to go ahead and push the right key, and I have right movement, left key, left movement. You'll notice that the character is not changing directions visually. You can see it moving left and right, but it's not facing left and right. We'll get into that later on when we get into animations, but now horizontal movement is working. Let's go back into our code. Now I want to clean this up a little bit. Right here, I had to say, in order to move right, I wanted it to say vector2 1.0. Now, this is a very common vector to the point where Unity gave it an alias, so I don't have to remember this. So I'm going to erase this, and instead of saying vector2 1.0, I'm going to say use a vector2 dot vector2 has a specific vector called right. So you see right here in the description, anytime I say vector2.right, it assumes that I mean the vector 1.0. So instead of saying vector2 1.0, I can just say vector2 right. And if I save it, I'm going to go back here and just test it, make sure it still works. And yes, it does still work. Okay, so now let's go ahead and repeat that process for vertical movement. So I'm going to create a float called vertical movement, vertical input. And then I'm going to say that every frame check, the vertical input is going to equal input dot get axis vertical. And now I should change this comment here. Move left or right depending on user input. This chunk of code right here, let me leave a comment, 2 backslashes, and this is going to be get the user input from the keyboard. Okay, and now I'm going to do another one, move up or down depending on user input. And the code for that will be the same thing as the other one, transform, and then transform has the ability to translate. And this time I'm going to use vector2 dot up. I'm still going to multiply it times time dot delta time. and then I'm going to multiply it by speed, and then I'm going to multiply it by vertical input. Make sure you're ending your lines with a semicolon. Push Ctrl S to save it. Let's go back into our game to test. Okay, left and right movement are working, and then vertical movement up and down. Now that's all working. Now I can even push combinations to get diagonal movement. Now I have a moving sprite.